Hey, what's going on everyone? In today's video, we're going to be going through a outdoor kettlebell training circuit. What I would suggest before you jump into this is making sure you have the foundational movements down first, as today is going to be a little bit more advanced. So make sure that you understand how to do a kettlebell swing properly. Make sure you know how to do a lunge, kind of getting into the lunge position, but also the hinge position, and that you're comfortable moving laterally as well. That will all be content that you can find on this channel, and I'll leave some of those links in the comments below so you can check those out to refer to. So typically what I like to start with before I get into any type of circuit is to just build a baseline of integration around my body. And I do this typically through a kettlebell swing. And we're going to call this the rhythmic kettlebell swing. And what we are primarily going to be prioritizing here is simply the rhythm of the motion. So this will just be a bilateral swing. It's not going to be anything too fancy. And the intent here is just kind of building the linkage to the ground and then into our entire structure. And what I try to prioritize as I'm going through this is somewhat favoring the rhythm relative to the tension that I have. Because if you have too much tension in your body, then the exercise itself is going to be a little bit self-defeating in a way, because you're just going to be moving through it relatively rigidly. And what we're trying to prioritize here is that fluidity of motion. So that way when we progress into our following exercises, we can kind of take a baseline of that rhythm into them. In terms of duration, I would suggest going through this for anywhere between a minute to about 2 minutes, or somewhere kind of right in the middle. I find that I really just kind of enjoy going through this sequence itself. It's a great way to warm up the body and just build kind of that baseline that we are going to operate from. So work a minute on the right hand and then a minute on the left here, and just start to overall get a feel for what that motion feels like in your body as you go through it. The next exercise we are going to get into is the overhead kettlebell swing. So this is going to build on our previous exercise where we were focusing on the rhythm. But what we are going to try to work on here is taking aspects of that rhythm and starting to meet it with some type of stability, particularly at the end range. So if you haven't practiced anything much overhead, make sure that you have some understanding of what kind of that overhead position should feel like and what stability should feel like in there. Because the intent here is going to be taking the rhythm of the swing and then meeting it at a point of stability at the top. And when we get to the top, it's not necessarily where I'm going to be flexing every muscle in my body to just try to lock in stability, but it should be kind of meeting a point of stability around my entire body. So as you can see here, we're taking many elements from the swing, and all we're doing is just meeting it at that point of tension at the top. Once I get to the top, I'm going to think about the reset portion of it. So once my arm gets to that top position, I'm going to think about letting some of that tension go to regather some of the momentum and the rhythm back into the swing. And ideally, I am going to be rotating my body here slightly from side to side. I'm not going to stay totally forward with my thoracic spine. We do definitely want there to be some rotation. So as my arm is coming down, you can see how my body slightly rotates into that, and then as the kettlebell is coming up, I'm also meeting that with a slight rotation here. Obviously, principles around having some core tension and intra-abdominal pressure are going to serve you very well here. So again, I'm going to reinforce it one more time to make sure that you have the basics dialed in before you start progressing to these more advanced exercises where things are going to be tested more fully. The next exercise we're going to move into is one of my personal favorites, which is the kettlebell switch. I like this exercise a lot because it applies a lot of different principles of different types of tension, rhythm, and mobility that you would find yourself utilizing in different type of sports or even in your everyday life. So to start with, what we are going to focus on is going into a unilateral position here, or split stance as it's often called as well. And what we are going to be doing is taking elements of the swing, but we are going to be challenging our stability a little bit further here. Because we are in that split stance, the weight distribution is going to be a little bit different, and you're going to have an idea of what that stability and tension feels like in that split stance position. Ideally, we are going to be favoring most of the weight on our lead leg, and it's predominantly going to stay there throughout the course of the entire motion for the most part. However, as I go to the switch, I'm going to be alternating that to the other leg. So this is getting used to kind of coordinating weight distribution from one leg to the other around a consistent rhythm. And what you can prioritize here is when you are going through the sequence is trying to orient the motion from the ground more than anything. Try not to let the upper body carry too much of the load. We want that to more or less be the leading driver to the motion. But a lot of the tension referral is actually happening from the ground. So I'm using my feet to drive the switch, and then I'm kind of catching that. I'm catching it almost in like an absorption type way, and then I'm using that to spring myself to the other side. What I might suggest here is if you're not used to doing that, just get used to doing it without the kettlebell initially. Just start with going from most of your weight on one leg, and then think about driving from that leg to switch to the opposite leg. And just get used to kind of the feel of how the hips are rotating, how the upper body is rotating, and again, that transference of weight distribution from one foot to the other. The last exercise that we're going to go through is the lateral kettlebell lunge. So what we want to think about here is our principles around lateral movement initially, and then combining that with the principles around the rhythm that we gain from the swing. So to start with, when we are breaking down lateral movement, we're going to go back to the weight transfer, a weight distribution transfer from one foot to the next. And we're also going to play with principles of ground tension here. So we're going to get used to pushing the ground almost away from us as we jump from side to side. And what this is starting to allow us to do is create some force output initially that is kind of like the building generator that is then going to propel us to the opposite side. And what we're doing here is as we kind of take the force from the ground and push ourselves to the side, we're going to absorb that into a lunge. And ideally, this force is all being oriented around the rhythm of the kettlebell. The kettlebell isn't so much there to be a raw strength device or tool. It's more or less to guide what is happening through our body. And our body is really kind of orienting it around this tool. So that's why with a lot of these exercises, you don't tend to have to go too heavy with them if what you're prioritizing is the kind of dynamism and more explosive output throughout the exercise. That's not to say that you can't eventually start to go a little bit heavier on this type of exercise. You definitely can, but I would suggest starting probably anywhere between 10 and 20 pounds, or between, we'll say like 4 to 10 kilos would kind of be the region that I would suggest you start at, depending on where your current fitness level is. As you start to increase the weight, the rhythm does tend to change a little bit, and you're also just going to have overall more integration and proper stability and tension in your body. So things just tend to get tested a lot further. So start with kind of the foundational principles, and then you can gradually work your way up to that heavier weight. Anyways, that's all for today's video on the outdoor kettlebell training circuit. I hope you guys enjoyed it and found some value in it. If you did, then don't be afraid to throw it a like, as well as subscribe to the channel for more future content similar to this. As well, something that would really help me out is if you did share this video with someone who you think would find value in it or you think would benefit from it in some way. I do tend to post content around not only movement stuff, but also this mindset and resilience standpoint that we have to have in life. I think those two kind of go hand in hand. So if that's something you're interested in, interested in, or you know someone who is, then don't be afraid to share this video, as that does help the channel grow a lot. Until next time, make sure you are prioritizing and then you are optimizing for you. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.